back to the Project Management Blueprint Facebook group. And today I'm going to be answering question number 3 from Mel. And Mel asks two parts to this question. I'm also going to throw in a bonus part to this question. So this first part of his question is rebates on project delays or past due dates. So I think what Mel is referring to here are delay notices in your contractor services agreement. If you want to think of delay notices, you can think of it as sort of the stick or the financial penalty for your contractor in the event that they don't finish the project by the substantial completion date that's outlined in your contractor services agreement. On the opposing side of that, which Mel does not mention in this question, is the performance bonus, which is like the carrot to the stick, which is a financial reward for the contractor finishing sooner than the substantial completion date. For those of you who don't know what this substantial completion date is or means, basically it means that the project or the space is ready for occupancy, meaning that it's now livable, it's habitable, you can move into it, you can have a tenant move into it. All of your building permit inspections would be done at this point, and there would be very small items required to finish, like deficiencies, things of that sort. So what I would say to Mel and for anyone else who has a similar question or has thought about implementing this is that the time to do it is, again, in your contractor services agreement. You can include a clause for either just a delay penalty, or you can include a second clause for the performance bonus. So you have both the carrot and the stick in one. And its intent is to incentivize the contractors, depending on how many you're hiring, to finish by the scheduled substantial completion date. Now, why would you want to have this added into your contract? And also, how would you calculate a reasonable cost in order to add it into your contract? So let me give you an example here. Let's say that your contractor says that they will finish your specific project in 8 weeks. There's no unforeseen circumstances that occur, no surprises behind closed walls or ceilings that will add on, or no material delays or subcontractor delays that would extend the length of the project at no fault of that general contractor, let's say. And for whatever reason, they're not able to finish by that substantial completion date. They finish 10 days later. How can you, as a property owner, recoup some of your carrying costs? And the answer to that is the delay penalty in your contractor services agreement. On the flip side of that is the performance bonus. So let's say instead of 8 weeks, your contractor is able to expedite the project and deliver it in 7. Everything goes according to plan. Some things he's able to accelerate or get trades in sooner, allowing them to finish certain tasks earlier in order to start subsequent tasks sooner, so on and so forth. Those are the two circumstances that you would either have a delay penalty or a performance bonus that could be applied. And how you would determine the costs for either of those would really be based at fair and reasonable costs at that would be based on your carrying costs as the property owner. So your mortgage, property taxes, your utilities, insurance, any other sort of expenses that you would have throughout the month. You can come up with a cost per day, which you could include in that delay penalty, and you can justify it to your contractor relatively easily. Again, conversely, on the performance bonus side of things, you would basically take that same calculation, but rather than doing it as a daily cost, I would turn it into a weekly cost, because it doesn't really do you that much good to finish a project a day or two sooner. I mean, it's great to finish sooner rather than later, for sure, but The point here is to create some sort of financial incentive or penalty for the contractor finishing later than required, or earlier than required. Going further to that, these are discussions that you should have with your contractor before you sign on the dotted line, before you sign your contract, to make sure that they're included on there. And you can include just a delay penalty, or you can include just a performance bonus, or you can decide to include both. The important thing is to have open communication with your contractor on the reasons why you want it to be included if it's not included in their contract or your version of a contract that you present to them, and how you were able to calculate the penalty or the bonus based on your monthly carrying cost. And rather than plucking an arbitrary dollar figure from the sky, and also rather than having a higher delay penalty than you have a performance bonus, it's very fair and reasonable to have an open-ended and honest discussion with the contractor as to, I want this included because this, that, or the other reason. So that's kind of number one as far as Mel's question goes. So I hope that helps Mel and everyone else that's listening to this. The second part of Mel's question is, after material costs, how can I assure myself I'm charged a reasonable markup on labor or service for my project? So to that, I would say, what is reasonable? A contractor, in order for a contractor to have to stay in business, they need to be profitable. Every contractor wants to earn a fair wage and be compensated accordingly to the value that they can bring to their customers, in this case, to you. And so I understand that cost efficiency is a high priority on every investor's list because they want to maximize the ROI that they can make on a property. But at the same time, you want your contractor to be able to put food on the table, pay their bills, pay their laborers, pay their staff in the office if they have that, so on and so forth. So in my eyes, in order for them to do this, and hopefully they have an idea of what costs and what amounts they need to charge to stay in business, would be a 30 to 50% overhead and profit margin. If a contractor's business isn't making money, then it's losing it. And as a real estate investor, your priorities should be to build great working relationships with your power team members. And that includes your contractor, who I strongly feel is your number one most important power team member, because good contractors and reputable contractors are so few and far between. So to break down how I get to this 35 to 50% overhead and markup, there's a couple of things that you need to consider. There's a cost of goods sold, or consider from the contractor's perspective, and this is the way that they should be pricing their work. So there's the cost of goods sold, which is direct and indirect costs of producing the work itself. So producing the project, that could include labor, material, consumable items, reimbursable expenses, tools, equipment rentals, things like that. Then you have their overhead expenses, and overhead expenses is the cost of running the business from day to day. This is sometimes referred to as operating costs. And this could be things like their office lease, if they have a brick and mortar office location, vehicle leases or financing, insurance, general liability, WSIB, insurance for their office space, insurance for their vehicles. Then you have their office employees, if they have any office employees there. So they would have salaries, they would have taxes, they would have benefits that they would have to pay to. There would be marketing costs for the branding, the website, social media, signage, things like that. There would be, if they have a sales department, there's costs for doing in-person consultations because there's time allotted for that. There's estimating costs because they spend 3 to 5 hours, let's say, on any given estimate for a specific project, depending on the vastness and how large that project is. They have to pay third-party professionals like lawyers, accountants, bookkeepers. They might have loans or lines of credit that they have to pay down the interest on or pay down completely. So that's number two. So you have cost of goods sold, you have overhead expenses, and then you have lastly profit. And the profit would be everything that's left over after all of those costs or expenses are factored in, and that would be used to reinvest back into the business. Ideally, if they want to scale their business, or pay down debt, pay off debt, things like that. So when you factor in all of those, you can see that the overhead and profit that a contractor will charge on top of their base, cost to say hire a laborer to work on site will vary greatly depending on the size of the company itself. So if you're working with one guy in a truck or two guys in a truck, you can reasonably expect that their overhead and profit margin that they would put on top of their labor would be less than that of a larger company with several office employees, fleet of vehicles, company vehicles, maybe multiple office locations, a sales team, or a dedicated salesperson, an estimator, depending on whether the owner works in the field or not. That would be a salary that, in addition, that would have to be paid. So the larger company is, the more moving parts, the more overhead expenses that they will have, and they have to recoup those costs somewhere, and those costs are recouped from the overhead and profit margin that they put on top of that cost of goods sold. So saying all this, if you really want to get down to the brass tacks and you want to find out if they're charging you a reasonable markup on labor specifically for their services, you can do it in a couple of ways. You can try to hire that same type of labor directly. So if you can find a handyman, or you can find a carpenter or an electrician or a plumber or an HVAC technician that works alone, and just have a real discussion that you're trying to put together a budget for your project and would like to have a rough idea of how much they charge hourly. You might also be able to look at postings on Indeed, Workopolis, and see kind of what the going rate is for a contractor that provides that same service on an hourly basis. And then from there, you can add on that 35 to 50% overhead and profit margin on top of those costs and see where you come out to. The other thing to consider is also the supply and demand of contractors in your area. Now, obviously, as far as the real estate market is concerned, contractors are at a high demand over the COVID-19 era, let's say, because everyone was, staying in place, not going on vacations, not going to cottages. They were making home improvements and were able to access credit at very low interest rates in order to make said home improvements. Property values exploded, making it easier to get credit because of the equity that was built up in their homes. So all of that is to say that contractors that are higher in demand, especially good contractors, reputable contractors, quality contractors, are going to charge more because they know that they're in demand and that they know and understand the value that they bring to the marketplace. So the more demand there is, by essence, maybe you might not see it as fair on them to charge more, but it would be the same thing with any business. When supply is cut, when supply is down and demand is up, then prices will be raised. That's just world economics. So you have to factor that into the equation as well. What does the current market landscape look like right now? We're a bit on with the higher interest rates. There's not as many sales of properties. People aren't able to gather or to get more credit to spend on making improvements to their property. And so some contractors are sitting around waiting for work to find them. So demand has gone down, and so has supply. So then prices should also, you would think, for those contractors that are not on the upper tier of reputable, uh, quality, good contractors would still be in demand, but then there would be this other pool of contractors who don't have as much work coming in, don't have as many leads, I should say, coming in, don't have as many jobs filling out their calendar for the remainder of the year, and they might be more likely to cut their prices down, being specifically overhead and profit, in order to keep the money coming in and stay afloat as a business. So we're in very challenging times in this regard. So hopefully that gave you a broad sense of the things that you can look for as far as what's a reasonable markup to charge on labor, how you can deduce what a reasonable hourly rate is for the type of labor that you're looking for. And then going from that, what's a reasonable markup that you can expect to pay on top of that cost for the labor itself. So the other part of Mel's question, which I'm going to throw in here as a bonus, is the material costs. So I know that there are a lot of people who would prefer to pay for the materials themselves directly, thinking that it's going to save them a bundle of money on the overall cost of their project. And in some cases that may be true, and in some cases it might not be worth the hassle. And I'll explain to you why. So firstly, the contractors are able to get substantial discounts from the suppliers because of the volume of materials that they're ordering. Right away, contractors get a discount off of the retail price at a big box store like that. Now, obviously, there's building suppliers that you can go to direct, which I would recommend if you are going to be purchasing materials, wholesalers, things like that, that aren't the big box stores, because the big box stores put a huge markup on their products compared to what you can pay elsewhere. But that's kind of besides the point. So you just have to factor in that. Are you paying a higher price than what the contractor would pay for you just to save the markup that the contractor would add on to the cost of materials? You have to think that one over. The other part of it, it muddies the waters in a lot of ways, because if you're the one that's ordering the materials, you don't want the contractor to put a markup on those costs. How does that complicate the coordination of the overall project? Because if you're the one that's ordering it, you will be responsible for organizing, scheduling, paying for, and potentially receiving deliveries, because what the contractors are marking up the costs on materials for is to do all of that type of coordination. So and then you have to weigh the risks of, if you're the one that's going to be coordinating all of that, are you constantly communicating with your contractor to find out when they need those materials on the job? Do you have the time to allocate in order to do that? If you aren't able to get materials to site by a certain date, then that liability falls on your shoulders for potential project delays. The other point that you should consider, it comes down to the warranty. Now, this would depend a lot on the material specifically, but let's just say you're ordering cabinets, or you're ordering, probably a better example would be floor finishes or trim work doors, and for 6 months down the road the product fails. Now, under the contractor's warranty, they would, if they were the ones purchasing materials, they would be the one responsible for any repair work or ordering of new materials from the suppliers and dealing with all of that. If you're the one that purchased the materials and the contractor is simply the one that installed said materials that you provided, that really, there's a lot of gray area in that, is what I'm getting at. Is it the workmanship and the installation that caused the product to fail, or was it a faulty product that failed? And whose responsibility is it then, therefore, to contact the manufacturer to get new product? And should the contractor, on their own dime, do the repairs, or is it reasonable to expect that they should charge for the repair work because it wasn't a result of a faulty installation, it was a result of a faulty product? Now, you can go back and forth on that discussion with your contractor if you want to go down the road where you're the one ordering materials, but it's something that you can consider or should consider. And I wanted to include it here as a bonus, just because a lot of people don't think that far ahead. They think that they're saving money but at the expense of greater risk, greater potential costs, delays. So you really have to weigh the pros and cons of going down that route. So anyways, Mel, I hope that helped answer all of your questions. I hope that helps everyone else that's watching or listening to this. And I thank you very much for investing the time in the Project Management Blueprint Facebook group. And I hope you have a great day. Have a good one.